one more, but we know they're already downtown, so we'll get started soon. But with the rain today, I know could slow folks down. Thanks again for your patience. All right. In the interest of time, we do now meet quorum, so we can formally adjourn or initiate the meeting, whatever the right word is. All right. So before we get started, I'll introduce myself. My name is Cecily Taylor. I am a SANDAG staff member, normally your liaison, but as we wait for a new appointment, a chair appointment for our group, I'll be chairing today. So nice to be here with everyone. And before we kick off, I'd like to ask our interpreter to introduce themselves and go over the processes and procedures of today's meeting.
Announcement from interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, welcome everyone to the March 13th, 2025 Mobility Working Group meeting. Again, my name is Cecily Taylor, SANDAG staff member, and I'll be the chair today. Now, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region has historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples, who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations of our region, the most in any county in the United States, from 4 cultural groups: the Kumeyaay Diegueño, Luiseño, the Cupeño, and the Cahuilla. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many centuries in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the injustices of the past. Now, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to be recorded, you can turn on your microphone.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we begin, I would like to ask Michael, who is our clerk today, to confirm if we have quorum.
We have quorum, Chair.
Thank you. And before we begin with the agenda items, I'd like to review the meeting process, both for the working group members and the members of the public who wish to participate. Now, for working group members, if you would like to speak and give comment, please raise your hand and I will call on you by name. For any members of the public, if you would like to speak and are in person, you can turn in a speaker slip to the clerk. And if you are online, you can raise your hand and the clerk will call on you. Now, per our board policy, the amount of time allowed for each verbal comment is determined based on the number of agenda items, the complexity of those items, and the number of persons anticipated to offer comment. So this allows us to hear from as many people as possible and to complete our business while we still have quorum. Based on these factors, for today's meeting, each member of the public will be allowed 2 minutes for their comments. Okay, now we can move on to the non-agenda public comment and member comment. Do we have any comments from the public?
We have no public comment, Chair.
Okay, great. Would any members of the working group like to offer non-agenda comments? No? Okay. Now, we do have a few staff updates for the group today. First, a reminder from our finance team about the newly approved RTCIP fee adjustment and the associated timeframe for collection. that you should have gotten emails about that. And that notice also included an important request to submit your annual Regional Transportation Congestion Improvement Program updates by the end of this month, March 31st. And that's so our ITALK committee can review. The submittal is important to remain eligible for the Transnet local street and road funding. In that email, we did provide sample letters, and you can also go back to your submittal from the prior fiscal year and make updates to that, whichever works best. But please get that in on time, and we'll follow up again after today with a reminder because of how critical that is. Another request also went out late last month to help us with updating the regional bike map. So if you didn't see an email from atnetwork@sandag.org, please let us know. We can be sure to send it along. And we are looking for comments on bike projects by Tuesday, March 18th, coming up soon. That will help us ensure that we're accurately reflecting the bikeways in each jurisdiction. And thank you to everyone who responded to our survey last month about changing the meeting date. It did look like Tuesdays are not going to work for the majority of folks. We did just send another request out yesterday to see if a Wednesday timeframe could work moving forward. So hopefully you saw that new survey go out. Please respond to that, or if it's easier for you to let us know today, that works too. Happy to take that response, but want to see if we can find a new time for this meeting moving forward. And one final note, you would have seen in our agenda packet today that we're including the membership roster moving forward. And that'll help us be consistent between our working group and the policy advisory committees and the board, how they set up their agenda packets. So if you do see any errors in that, let us know and we can update our records. Any questions? I know there was a handful of updates there, but any questions on that before we move on to the agenda? No? Okay. Then we can move on to the first consent item. This is to approve the January 9th, 2025 meeting minutes. Would anyone like to make the motion to approve last mobility working group meeting minutes? Okay. Oh,
Advisory.
sorry, you are an advisory member, so unfortunately we can't make the motion, but thank you. Yes, okay, thank you, Tila. A second?
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second, and we can now vote to approve. If you would like to approve, please raise your hand at this time. Okay. Would anyone like to oppose? Or anyone like to abstain? Okay, one abstention. All set then?
Motion passes with those members present.
Thank you, clerk. I realized, should we have taken public comment on the consent items?
We have no public comment.
Okay. Any member comments? I should have done that before the vote. Sorry, everyone. Okay. Then we can move on to our first report item, which is the Flexible Fleets Pilot Grant Program Call for Projects. Staff will provide an overview of this new grant program and request feedback on the draft call for projects from the Mobility Working Group members. We'll be hearing from Jenny Russo and Emily Doss.
Morning, everyone. Happy to be here today. My name is Emily Doss. I'm a regional planner, and I'm joined here with Jenny Russo, and we're here today to present to you the new Flexible Fleet Pilot Grant Program Call for Projects. This is an opportunity for local agencies across the region to pilot a flexible fleet in their jurisdiction. So I know many of you are familiar with the Flexible Fleet Program at SANDAG and serve on the Flexible Fleet Task Force. But just quick reminder of what flexible fleets are. Flexible fleets are on-demand transportation services that can be used to help people reach local destinations or connect to high-speed transit. Flexible fleet categories include micromobility, which are small, low-speed vehicles such as e-scooters, bikes, and e-bikes. This is often referred to as bike share or scooter share. Neighborhood electric vehicle shuttles are a type of microtransit service. They are lower speed electric shuttles used for short trips, typically up to 3 miles, and they operate on a fixed route or an on-demand route. Car share is a service that allows people to rent a car for a short period of time, often by the hour. Rideshare is carpool, vanpool, and pooled ride-hailing services such as Lyft shared or organized vanpool programs like SANDAG Zone. Microtransit is multi-passenger vehicles that can carry 5 to 15 passengers and provide rides within a defined service area. These service areas are typically reserved through a mobile app or through a call center for those people without access to a smartphone. All right. The Flexible Fleet Pilot Grant Program is intended to fund projects that expand shared mobility travel choices, enhance transit connections, reduce greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled. And it will also provide initial funding to seed projects that can serve as models for the region and sustain operations following the expiration of the grant. We received feedback from several 2024 presentations on what is important for flexible fleets generally and how SANDAG should evaluate proposals. We saw common themes around the need for financial sustainability, integration with transit, engagement and equity, informed operations planning. And we're hoping that these pilots will continue to influence travel behavior and help us meet our greenhouse gas emission reduction targets throughout the region. Based on feedback received from the Flexible Fleet Task Force and Mobility Working Group last year, eligible applicants will include federal, state, and local government agencies, tribal governments, transit operators, and military institutions. There would be 2 eligible grant types as shown on this slide. Eligible activities would include service operations, vehicle purchases, software or hardware purchases, or supportive infrastructure such as vehicle charging, docking stations, right-of-way improvement, signage, and wayfinding. And then all services must be within San Diego County. And I'll pass it over to Jenny to continue on about our funding.
Good morning, everyone. So as you can see on this slide, the amount of funding that we would put out through the call for projects is $4.5 million. This funding is federal dollars, so it's coming from the Regional Transportation Surface Program, the RSTP. So it does have a match. There's a required non-federal match of 11.47% that the applicant would have to provide. The maximum award that any single applicant could receive would be $1 million. And then typical with most federal funding, there's federal provisions, non-discrimination, Title VI program requirements, and ADA accessibility requirements. And we would offer training on what all of those things are and how that would impact a proposed service program once a call for projects goes out, because not everyone is completely familiar with how that impacts a service program. In terms of timeline, so through the end of this month, we are coming through our working groups and the Transportation Committee, seeking feedback on the eligibility, the criteria, and other components that's on the call for projects. We'll make any changes that were requested through this process and take the final draft back to the Transportation Committee in April, and then ask for their recommendation to release the call for projects to the board at their meeting also in April. Presuming that the board approves the call for projects, it would be released, which will kick off a 90-day application window. Applications would be due somewhere like mid or late July. And then from there, between July and September, we would do our evaluation process. So we'd be looking for external evaluators to help score components of the application. And then we would return with those funding recommendations to the Transportation Committee and the board in September. Asking for their approval. If all goes well, then we would be entering in our grant agreements in November, and services could begin. We probably think there may be a little bit of a delay, so probably December or January timeframe. And it's anticipated that the service would last as long as 3 years, sort of depends on the applicant and how you structure your program and how far you think that your funding could continue. Oops. So the draft evaluation criteria are provided in detail in attachment 1. What we have shown here on the slide are just the overall categories. As you can see, the top ones are financial sustainability, feasibility, and integration with transit. These were prioritized based on feedback that we heard from all of you and the Flexible Fleets Task Force. And then there's additional criteria for equity and accessibility, an engagement plan, and of course, matching funds. Performance metrics. So all of our grant programs have performance metrics that are included in those. So you can see them included in attachment 2. There's quite a variety of different metrics that are proposed there. They sort of roll into these 4 categories that you can see on the slide. So measuring things like productivity, the connections to transit and shared rides, community and equity, and then cost effectiveness. So throughout the grant program, the duration of that grant, each of the grantees would be expected to provide data to us on a quarterly basis, showing how each of these metrics are being met or what's forecasted to meet, because some of them are not, as you're going, it may be at the end of the grant term. So we're looking for feedback from you as well today. If you have any comments for us on anything we missed in the metrics, anything you want us to clarify in those. And as I mentioned, you can find all of them in detail in attachment 2. So with that, that concludes our presentation. As I mentioned, we're here really looking for feedback from you. You are our last stop before the Transportation Committee. So I'm looking forward to a discussion and seeing what you guys think.
Thank you both so much. All right. Do we have any comments from the public? Clerk?
We have no public comment, Chair.
Great. If any working group members would like to offer comments, please raise your hand. Right, Lisa?
Thank you so much for the presentation. Lisa Madsen, Port of San Diego. Quick question though. Is this grant only going to be eligible to cities and the county, or will other jurisdictions be eligible as well?
Jurisdictions, the government agencies, so the Port of San Diego would be eligible, tribal governments and military institutions and transit operators.
Thank you.
Varun?
I had a quick clarification for Jenny. It looks like the match is intended to be in cash. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And my other comment is that, and question is that, FACT is the Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. Our role is to look for and promote coordination between services as much as possible for effectiveness, efficiency, all those reasons. I didn't see if there was any weight given to coordinating with other applicants or coordinating with other providers of services. I would highly recommend that there is some sort of at least inducement in these applications to not only apply individually for one city or one agency, but to try to make it a joint effort between partners to get more out of this limited funding. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
As you know, Oceanside has our flexible fleet program. And since we already have something established, will we be able to apply for this grant to continue that program?
At this time, programs that have previously been funded by SANDAG aren't eligible.
Are not
Eligible. Yep.
Thank you for the presentation. Nathan Schmidt, City of Carlsbad. And I appreciate SANDAG's efforts to promote really anything to do with flexible fleets. It's a program in Carlsbad that we have found successful, and we'd like to see that promoted throughout a region. I guess at a high level, just like to kind of really encourage SANDAG to continue funding flexible fleets. We'd really like to see funding at a much larger scale than this. We'd really like to see flexible fleets rolled out at a regional level. We've run a pilot program in the city of Carlsbad. It ran very well. It was a last mile connection from Poinsettia Station to our Palomar Airport Road Business Park. It was a pilot program, so I guess just kind of word of caution on the pilot program is, I think we've seen the success of these programs, but once you take them away, it does tend to create some problems. So in Carlsbad, we really have a strong desire for such a program to return, but we don't have funding to support that, unfortunately. So I think in terms of, how the public perception side, I think it's just something to be aware of. I do see you've kind of built in terms of your evaluation criteria, ways to address that in terms of funding sustainability. It's difficult to meet those requirements from a city's perspective to show that 4 or 5 year plus funding for such a program. We really lean on our transit providers to provide that long-term funding. So we think that these types of programs should start to come out of for transit providers. And really moving forward, like I said, we're happy to see these programs, pilot programs take place, but just be aware that we really need to have that long-term funding in order to start to move the needle in terms of people starting to take transit more in some of our outlying areas, such as the city of Carlsbad. So thank you for the presentation, though.
Right, Steve?
Thank you. Similar question that Tila had, a little different though. So we have a current NEV on-demand shuttle service, but it's funded through it's not funded with SANDAG funds. And it's going to be expiring soon. So would we be eligible to apply under this program?
It's still not completely solidified until we bring it back to TC next week. But at this point, unless there's a significant change to the project scope or service area, it won't be eligible.
So if
But-
we're expanding the service area or we're adding more vehicles, would that be eligible?
Yes, that is leaning towards the direction that we're looking for, but the specific nitty-gritty details of expanded service areas and scopes will be finalized after we present this item to TC and bring it back to TC for final approval.
Yeah, I think we've heard from a few people today. I think my hope when this got presented to this group about 6 months ago was that there would be actually some priority for cities that have invested in this type of service to make it more sustainable. And this is a different funding source. It's a federal funding source that you're managing. So I would really hope that, cities that have existing service that doesn't have a sustainable funding plan moving forward should be eligible. I mean, that would be my request because, I think you heard from Nate, the worst thing you can do is have a successful service and then funding dries up and it's no longer available to your community. So I would like to get some more clarity on that and, make that a formal request that cities that are looking to make their programs continue or expanded service should be eligible.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Williamson. I'm the Deputy Director of Mobility Planning. And I did want to address that because what we're doing today is we're getting your input. So this is really important input, and we'll definitely take that recommendation to TC. I think the nature of an expanded service or a service that isn't currently funded by SANDAG could be applicable. So we'll take that back and discuss that in more detail. The goal, though, with these pilots is that we want to demonstrate different service types, different areas, different, spans of service, all the different things to kind of figure out what is going to be the most sustainable type of microtransit that we have in the region. So I want to assure you, though, that the answer could definitely be yes. We will go back and look at this and figure out how that's going to relate in the criteria. But we'll take it to TC as well. Thank you.
Yes.
So I kind of wanted to,
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to dive into a couple things like that Stephen said was if we wanted to expand it, it would be kind of nice if we can't apply for the grant to continue what we already have in Oceanside in the certain areas that we are covering, but expand it, that would be nice if we can apply for this grant to expand what we have. I will say that our citizens in Oceanside have been very appreciative of the program. It was, I think, paused for a couple of months, and there was a lot of comments that came to City Council about wanting to bring it back. We have had surveys done, and people do use it when they're coming in, to the hotels and wanting to get around. There's people who use it to go to work. There are people who do it to go downtown, like to farmers market, or to do their shopping. And as we all know, parking is slowly becoming a pickle everywhere. So has been very beneficial for Oceanside, and we have had a lot of positive feedback from everybody. And we have expanded it from when it first started to go into some neighborhoods that are more, I guess, what you would call disadvantaged. And so that's been really helpful. Yes, there is a fee to it. At first, when we started it, there was no fee. There is a fee, and we haven't had any pushback on that either. So that's helpful. But if, just again, piggybacking on what Stephen said, we have something established in Oceanside and it is working, and if we can keep that momentum going, that would be very beneficial to her, that we can expand it. And especially with some certain developments that we have further east in Oceanside, that like our Front Wave Arena, trying to get, access to those locations and stuff would be nice.
Any more comments?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just real
Sorry.
quick. So I understand this is a pilot program. So after the pilot is over, what are the next steps to maybe make this permanent, or is this going to be part of the RTP as a permanent funding line, or what's the next steps, I guess, just to understand that?
As of right now, this is a one-time program. The board just allowed the $5 million set aside for it. We haven't had any direction yet from them to continue to fund it, but I'm sure that'll be part of discussion when we bring this to them.
And I'm sure after you have the data and the information from the pilot. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's where the performance metrics are going to be really helpful to demonstrate.
Yes, Tara?
Good morning, Tara Lieberman, County of San Diego. Thank you so much for the presentation, and also thank you for the recognition of areas that are transit deserts and having points allocated for providing services within those areas. I did want to know, would there be a possibility of providing some additional points for, it seems like that section of integration with transit is really heavily weighted for connecting to transit, but if a community is a transit desert, if there's a lack of existing transit, would there be consideration of maybe providing some additional points for micromobility options that are connecting residents to services or amenities within those communities as opposed to fixed transit lines?
I can go ahead and take that one. So criteria number 2, integration with transit, the same amount of points would be awarded whether or not you're connecting to an existing transit network or you're filling that transit desert gap. So we're looking for either or, and they'll be weighted the same.
Any last comments? Yes?
I just wanted to not point out, but add in that I would like to see these more in rural areas. Like I was thinking Crest, for example. It's an older community. We have 60, 80-year-olds who are retiring or retired. They don't have a lot of amenities out there, and a lot of them are trying to stop driving, or they can no longer drive. And unfortunately, we can't provide service. It's very difficult to get a 40-foot bus out there with a lot of windy roads, a lot of just roads not being properly maintained. So I'd like to see a lot of these pilots be in those areas rather than affluent areas or places that have actual transit connections.
Anyone else?
I have one more thing to mention before we move on to the next item. So the May 8th Mobility Working Group will be a joint working group focused on microtransit, where it works well, where it doesn't work so well, the positives, negatives, all things microtransit. We'll have panelists with experience on all sorts of different types of microtransit programs in attendance that you all can ask questions to and learn a bit more from them. And then NCTD and SANDAG will provide another presentation, and we're hoping that it'll be at the new offices, the new boardroom at the new SANDAG offices. So more to come on that, but that's just kind of a look ahead, also in alignment with our grant program timeline.
Okay, with that, we can move on to the next item. Thank you both for the presentation. Next, we'll hear from SANDAG Associate Regional Planners Ruby Morales and Tim Garrett for an update on the coordinated plan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Garrett. I'm joined here by Ruby Morales. We're both Associate Regional Planners here at SANDAG. Thank you for having us back today. We came to the Mobility Working Group, I think it was back in the fall, September, October timeframe, and just wanted to give you an update today on where we are developing the coordinated plan. So I'm going to refresh everyone on what the coordinated plan is, and then Ruby's going to share some of the results that we've gotten from our surveying effort. So the coordinated plan provides a 5-year blueprint for how SANDAG and regional partner agencies will help to deliver transit and social service transportation throughout the San Diego region. The plan focuses on strategies to address the transportation needs of the region's older adults, people with disabilities, and people with limited means in particular. Completing the plan fulfills various requirements and ensures that funding is available for providers in the region. And a few definitions. When we say transit, we're talking about fixed route transit here. So that's buses, trains, trolleys, specialized transportation we'll refer to a lot. And that often takes the form of shuttles and vans, other types of vehicles with eligibility typically limited to older adults and people with disabilities. So not just open to the general public. Some of the requirements that we're fulfilling come from federal, state, and local sources. So federal transit law requires that we do this plan, taking a look at those target populations like I mentioned. And particularly, this is really important for distributing Section 5310 funding. We distribute that through the Specialized Transportation Grant Program. We also have state requirements through the Transportation Development Act, and that's requiring us to measure public transit productivity, performance measures, and implement recommendations from the triennial TDA performance audit. And then we also have local requirements set out in SANDAG Board Policy 18, which is the policy that sets out the responsibilities for SANDAG and transit operators in terms of long-range and short-range transit planning responsibilities. And in terms of that, we recommend regional short-range transit plan service changes and the ways to make our transit system work better. So we've done several forms of outreach throughout this process the last several months as we've been working on it. We did 3 focus groups, one including transportation providers, specialized transportation providers, and paratransit. And then 2 groups, focus groups of people who would be riding transit and specialized transportation to get their perspectives on what works and what doesn't work well. We also did a really large survey, and Ruby's going to talk about the results of that, where we collected a bunch of surveys during the month of December 2024. We got over 1,500 valid responses. And so we've been digging through those and sharing the results today. And we're also doing several presentations, including this one. We did a round of presentations in the fall to our working groups. We'll also be going to the Transportation Committee and Board of Directors to get their feedback on some of the things that we found and what they would like us to include in the plan. And then one more thing, public hearings, we've been tallying up or taking note of all of the unmet transit needs, comments that have been heard at the STAC public hearings. That's part of the process as well. And so like I said, we have some results to share. They're still draft at the moment. We have a consultant team that has given us draft survey data, but we're still finalizing and making sure that everything is clean and verified. But we'll be including the survey report with the coordinated plan when that gets finalized. And ultimately, we want to present what we have today, our draft survey results. We have our interpretations of what the data is telling us, but we want to hear from you if these agree with what your perspectives are, what you're seeing in the data, and what you hear from constituents in your jurisdictions. And then ultimately, we'll be forming recommendations, how to improve the transportation system, what our priority funding recommendations would be. So we really want your feedback on what some of those should be, particularly for older adults and people with disabilities, like I mentioned. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ruby. She's going to talk through some of the results.
Thanks, Tim. So like Tim mentioned, the survey was conducted in December of 2024 over a 1-month period. We received 1,544 valid responses from across the San Diego region. Participants were asked to self-identify their disabilities. So to be eligible for the survey, you had to be over 65 years old or with a disability or both. And this table shows the breakdown of participants with a disability and no disability over the age of 65 and under the age of 65. And like I mentioned, participants were asked to self-identify their disabilities. Mobility impairment was the most common type of disability, along with vision and hearing impairments. Respondents were asked about trips they had made in the last month and the mode by which those trips were made. This graph shows responses from older adults and people with disabilities. We can see that personal vehicle was the mode that was most chosen, along with getting a ride from a family member or a friend, followed by walking and wheelchair trips. And we can see that people with disabilities rely on a lot of different modes. Respondents were also asked how many times in the last month they traveled using a specific mode, so the frequency of a mode. And this graph shows responses for older adults only. The purple means a mode was used 6 or more times, and the orange means it was used up to 5 times. And personal vehicle is still a top choice, along with walking and using a wheelchair, and using a bicycle. When we look at how people with disabilities responded, personal vehicle is still the top mode, but we see an increase in the number of trips made by other modes, such as public transit, paratransit, and taxis, as well as in the other category. The survey included a section that asked respondents about their unmet transportation needs. Respondents were asked how often they are not able to go somewhere that they need to go due to a lack of available transportation. People with disabilities are more likely to miss trips several times a week or very often compared to older adults. And so we see that in the top line. Respondents were asked what challenges they experience when using and considering transportation options in San Diego County. Almost half of respondents identified a lack of transit to their desired location as a key challenge, so like where they were trying to go. Other common challenges include safety concerns, difficulty getting to and from bus stops or stations, and a lack of transportation available when they needed it. So people with disabilities are more likely to experience all of these challenges compared to older adults. And if we see the none of the above option, it's a lot more older adults saying that they have none of those challenges. Respondents who missed trips were asked what would help them complete their necessary or desired trips. Over half of the respondents selected more routes and transportation services. Other commonly selected solutions included more frequent transportation service, door-to-door options, and transportation options during the late nights or weekends. And so I will note that door-to-door options are a specialized transportation, where areas most of the other top solutions listed here could be met through increased service levels on fixed route transit. And people with disabilities rated these transportation solutions higher than older adults. And these responses are also consistent with what we heard in the focus groups. Respondents were also asked about their level of comfort using technologies to help with making and planning trips. A significant portion of survey respondents are very comfortable using technology for trip planning. And this is also consistent with what we heard in the focus groups. Respondents were also asked where they gather information about transportation options. The most common source was online searches or websites, followed by word of mouth, printed materials or flyers, and brochures. Some other sources that were listed were receiving information from the San Diego Regional Center, calling MTS, health insurance providers, and some mentioned that they would notice service vehicles on the roads, and that's how they were aware of services. And focus group participants also mentioned calling the trip planning service at MTS to access planning information. And they suggested that some additional ways of learning could be mailers to their homes and other printed materials as well. And now I'll hand it back to Tim to summarize our key takeaways.
Thank you, Ruby. So as you can see, we have a whole lot of data here, and we have a lot more even that we weren't able to put in this presentation, but these were just some of the ones that jumped out at us as kind of being the most impactful and most instructive as things that would inform our recommendations. So as Ruby mentioned, driving, kind of the typical modes, walking, using the wheelchair, getting rides from friends and family members are really common ways of getting around. But after that, fixed route transit is really an option that a lot of people are using. Almost 20% of our survey population had used transit in the last month, and many folks had relied on it for several trips within the last month. So they're really using that to get around. They expressed the desire for more transit coverage and higher frequency service, just making that transit service more available when folks need it. Specialized transportation services could be really helpful. There's some challenges with that. Is that one thing? There's less of them. There's fewer of them available. You have to book ahead a lot of times, and so that's not quite as convenient as just showing up when on a transit route and there's a bus coming shortly. We also found that people are comfortable using technology, using websites for trip planning, but couldn't use some better information. So if we provide better resources, then a lot of folks are comfortable being self-sufficient and being able to figure out what options they have to get around. There's more to the coordinated plan than just these survey results, but this is kind of our newest information. So we wanted to highlight that from you, the survey and focus group kind of discussions that we've heard. But as I mentioned at the beginning, there's also a performance measurement component of the plan. So we'll be looking at transit, paratransit performance. We also have some flexible fleet performance from some of the pilot programs that have been happening in your jurisdictions. So the neighborhood electric vehicles and microtransit, we've been taking that data that's on our SANDAG open data portal, and we're incorporating some of the latest data from that. We're also taking a look at the Consolidated Transportation Services Agency, that's FACT, and some of the data that they have reported. And then the Specialized Transportation Grant Program, we want to make sure that the program that we've been administering for many years now, many cycles, is meeting the needs of our previous coordinated plan, and will continue to meet those needs. Ruby mentioned that there's an unmet transportation needs component. We had a question about that. So if we want to expand on that and what it would take to meet some of those needs, or to meet all of those needs, if we could, and how much it would cost to do so, how much additional funding would be necessary. And that will ultimately, we'll transition that into goals and objectives of the plan, how we implement that, what types of strategies can SANDAG take, and what kind of, what additional funding should we be seeking as an agency, and priority recommendations for programs like Specialized Transportation Grant Program. And all of this is, we're writing the plan now, and we'll be anticipating releasing the draft plan for public review next month in April 2025. As I mentioned, we're doing some more working group presentations in TC. And so once we get that feedback, we'll release the plan for the public, anticipate about a month of public review before we bring that back to TC for approval. With that, really want to hear, well, we'll finish the presentation, but we'll really want to hear if you have any questions, discussion. We want to hear your feedback on some of these findings that we presented. So with that, if you have any follow-up questions, our emails are here. We also have coordinatedplan@sandag.org is a great way to follow up with us as well after the meeting. With that, turn it back to Cecily for comments.
All right, thank you both for the presentation. Do we have any public comments on this item, Clerk?
No public comment, Chair.
Thank you. All right, any member comments? Yes. Good.
Thank you, Tim and Ruby. I'm sorry, but I will just repeat what I said in my prior comment about coordination in these regional programs. And that is my role, by the way, on this committee, is to represent the Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. and promote coordination, as I mentioned earlier. I think that this effort has been extensive. I appreciate what you're doing to spread this information and also to gather all the feedback that you presented. What I wanted to recommend and discuss here is that obviously there's a federal, state, and local mandate, like you said, to promote coordination. This is a coordination plan that we're talking about, but there's a disconnect between when you look at the history of how it's been implemented and you look at the projects funded through the plan. I don't recall any project, and we're the beneficiary of some of those projects as well. I don't recall any project that actually involves two entities, cities, transit or paratransit, working together on any project. So I think that that's really what, to me, is disappointing about how it's been, just how it's played out in the past. Other jurisdictions try to manage that by having a scoring criteria that incentivizes these kind of joint applications. The state mandate for consolidated transportation services justifies coordination by saying that when you spend the same dollar, which comes from grant funds, and we all know they're scarce, in a way that you are procuring things jointly or providing services as two jurisdictions that share the service, you always get more output. So I'm hopeful, and I recommend strongly this time that as you develop this plan, which shows there are a lot of gaps, there are a lot of unmet needs, as we try to meet them, that we spend the money that's going to be eventually spent through the priorities established in this plan in a way that you get the most possible benefit out of that. And I believe that the way to do that is to promote or enforce, I would even say that, as much coordination as possible through this plan and through the way the outcomes of this plan are going to be implemented. So I hope we can work on that as we discuss the rest of this process. Thank you.
Any other comments? Oh, yes.
Thank you again for the presentation. Just quick comments this time. In regards to the data, I think it would be helpful if we could break it up into sub-region, just so we can understand the survey responses a bit better. You know, we've got a wide, diverse region. We've conducted these similar surveys in the past in the city of Carlsbad. We see a bit different in terms of the responses. In particular, we see a much higher use of active transportation, or at least a desire of older adults to use active transportation. So looking for us as a jurisdictions to provide safe, good facilities for them. So again, it'd be helpful, I think, if we could just break it up so we can understand it at a local jurisdiction better.
Any other comments? Okay. Thank you again for the presentation, and thanks to the members for their input. We'll move on to the final report item on our agenda, which is going to be given by SANDAG Regional Planner Michael Turlip and Evan Funk. Is that right, or do we have a little bit of a change? Okay, right. So we have, instead of Evan, we have Danielle Coachman here today, and they'll give an update on the On the Move project.
All right, good morning. I'm Danielle Coachman, the Manager of Strategic Partnerships. I'm going to give a brief introduction on a Caltrans planning grant that SANDAG was awarded. The full title is On the Move, Innovative Transit Priority Solutions for Complete Streets. The goal of this study is to undertake planning and some preliminary conceptual design concepts. So just early phase of developing some near-term pilot projects that can make our transit faster and roadways more efficient. As you may know, SANDAG is currently working on the planning for 6 new routes that will increase our rapid bus network in the region. However, major infrastructure projects like these can take over a decade to deliver. And every time we go out and do community outreach and engagement, we keep hearing from the community that we need to improve our transit options now, that we need faster travel times and more options. And so to that end, this study is looking at how we can use low-cost, near-term solutions to pilot roadway improvements. And so these improvements are designed not only to speed up our region's buses, but can also be used for microtransit or other vehicles, so specialized transportation services or other shared modes. And also looking at ways that these improvements could help improve safety and roadway operations for all users. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Michael Turlip, who is the project manager for this effort, so he can share more details.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, quick builds open up a range of opportunities for us and our partners, and that's because they utilize these low-cost materials like paint and bollards that can be deployed in a lower time frame, meaning first of all, that we can bring benefits or much needed improvements to our buses much sooner for a ridership. But more uniquely, because quick builds utilize temporary materials, this means that they can be utilized as pilot projects to more permanent changes down the line, which means that the community can interact with these changes first. And this allows for the community to see what these changes would do to their surrounding environment. And this is really important because this allows us to get more experimental as agencies and jurisdictions, and we can try stuff that's frankly a little bit more controversial, like bus-only lanes or bus bulbs, because ultimately these things are temporary and we can make adjustments based off the community's feedback, and if need be, remove these changes. We have an excellent example of a successful quick build project here in San Diego on El Cajon Boulevard, and this is when the city of San Diego and MTS partnered together to lay down 2.7 miles of bus-only lanes in order to improve the travel times and efficiency and on-time performance of the Rapid 215. And this was initially going to be an 18-month pilot project that took place in 2019 to evaluate the operational benefits of these bus-only lanes, as well as, more importantly, what the public acceptance would be like. And I don't know if you've traveled on El Cajon Boulevard recently, but those changes are still there, which means that this is a successful pilot project. And ultimately, these bus-only lanes decrease the travel times for the Rapid 215 and are generally well accepted by the public. So what exactly does the on-the-move report provide? So what you see on the screen are the 4 different phases of the report. And the first phase is going to be looking at what challenges our buses face, so understanding exactly what we're trying to solve for. Additionally, we're going to be working directly alongside our transit agencies to identify 20 different bus corridors that would benefit the most from these quick build improvements. We are also creating an inventory of all the different quick build treatments that could potentially be utilized here in San Diego. So we're looking to understand what the different costs associated with each are. More importantly, what are the benefits of each quick build treatment? And then also what other considerations there are when we're looking to deploy these treatments. And then taking the lessons from those first 2 phases, we're looking to exemplify what these improvements can look like. And so we'll do that by choosing 2 different bus corridors to receive a 10% design for these quick build improvements. And we'll be working directly alongside our jurisdictions to bring those hopefully to completion post the release of the on-the-move report. Then lastly, we'll be making implementation strategy guidelines and a roadmap that us and our partners can use, and this is, or when we are trying to successfully deploy quick builds. And this is really important because ultimately SANDAG does not have the authority to make roadway changes or bus stop changes, so we'll be needing to work directly alongside our partners to bring these kind of changes to life. So now taking a step back, really the bread and butter of this project is identifying what kind of quick build treatments we can deploy here in our region. And generally, the quick builds that we're looking at fall into 3 different categories. And the first category is roadway improvements, so taking paint and bollards and making changes to the roadway that will increase the efficiency as well as the on-time performance of our buses. So think bus priority lanes or queue jumps, and also thrown in here is pedestrian improvements just to help with safety accessing our bus stops. The next category is stop improvements, and so as you may know, a lot of our bus stops are lacking amenities. This isn't necessarily due to a lack of trying. Oftentimes it's hard to find funding or there's physical constraints at bus stops. So we're looking at alternative forms of seating or lighting that can improve the accessibility and safety of our bus stops. For example, small bus cubes or solar power lighting. And this is really important to our community groups, so we're definitely going to make sure to highlight this in this report. Then lastly, we're going to be looking at bus operation changes, like transit signal priority or bus stop consolidation, which can improve the efficiency and on-time performance of our buses without taking too much physical changes to make those improvements. So here's the timeline for this project. We're looking to achieve several different milestones over the oncoming months, and we're looking to do a significant amount of working or outreach to our working groups and our community groups. But ultimately, we're looking to release a final draft of this report in early summer. We're very excited to utilize this report as a great foundation to not only just deploy quick builds, but also to work alongside our partners to improve our buses. And one last thing I'd like to mention is next week, we're going to have a workshop. We've sent out invites to city staff. And we're going to be looking to get some feedback on this project and on this report, just so we can make these deliverables as beneficial as possible. But that's our report, or that's our presentation. We are appreciative of any feedback that you may have. And I'm happy to answer any questions, Danielle and I.
Thank you both. All right, first, can we see if we have any public comments on this item?
We have no public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. Any member comments? Yes.
This may make me sound really bad, but the one thing about the bus stop improvements like seating and all that stuff, one issue that I've noticed that we've been coming across is we've been asking NCTD to remove certain bus benches and all that stuff because we have the homeless camping out at the sites, and then it's making it uncomfortable for people to be waiting for their bus there. So has that been thought about how to approach that aspect of it?
That's exactly the type of feedback we're looking for. There are different ways of providing bus seating at shelters that can prevent that kind of hanging out. And so as we look at the different types of options for bus seating at shelters, that's something we can consider and incorporate into recommendations.
Yeah, and for each type of quick build recommendation, we will include those different considerations so people can understand up front that this treatment will address those kind of concerns. This one won't. There might be that problem if we lay out this kind of seating. So that will be addressed in this report.
Any other comments? Yes.
Just would like you to consider maintenance in terms of the quick build measures. I attended the NACTO conference this past year. I heard a lot of great things about the quick build measures that were being implemented in like Los Angeles, for example. But one of the cautions they advised us was maintenance is an issue just because it's temporary in nature. In order to keep it up to a certain aesthetic standard, you really have to keep these things maintained, which results in significant cost as well. So I think.
I just wanted to say I am hoping that you'll come to the workshop next week. That's one of the major things that we want to talk about is maintenance and materials and what works for the different jurisdictional needs from that perspective.
Yes.
Are you also looking at permitting requirements? I know they're quick builds, but they still are going to be in right away, people's right away. So is that something you're looking at as well to streamline any of that or to look at how to address that more quickly?
As part of the implementation strategy, we're going to look at a few different methods of getting towards deployment. We don't see any method where, we're doing this alone, and the jurisdictions need to be, a major player, if not leading the effort with support from SANDAG. And so from the permitting perspective, we're not necessarily looking at, any kind of streamlining recommendations, but hoping that getting some of our partners at the jurisdictions, really involved will help in that regard.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Lisa.
Sure. So will the roadway improvements include concrete bus pads? Because having worked in public transportation, I know more frequent bus service, heavier buses tear up the roads.
I don't know. We'll look into it. I think it's going to be a mention. I don't know if it's necessarily a quick build per se. So it will definitely be something that's mentioned as something that could go alongside these roadway improvements, but I don't see it as necessarily a quick build strategy. We'll consider it.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes.
I just wanted to add in, I don't think the bus priority lanes are technically like quick build. They can be if you just put them down and plop them down, but there's a lot of thought that goes into them. A great example is Park Boulevard up in Balboa Park. It's a great bus lane. It's beautiful. It's amazing for the whole year except for when it's needed, which is December nights. There's a bottleneck at Park Boulevard and the bus lane starts there. So you have to get to the bus lane. So you have to go to the bottleneck, makes our routes take 45 minutes to an hour for something that should take 5 minutes. It's also where you're going to put these. Are you going to put it next to a bike lane? Because then operationally speaking, you have to cut in and out of the bike lane. Are there going to be bus islands? Is it going to be separated by painting, or is there going to be some physical structure, a bollard? You're going to get community input. Where did my parking go? Because to put a priority lane, you have to take away parking, take away a lane, do some expansion, that type of thing. So just want to throw that out there.
100%. And there's like multiple different types of quick builds, right? And so a lot of times, like I mentioned, quick builds can be utilized as pilots to already planned projects. So there's already going to be all that planning, all those considerations in place. But yes, quick builds definitely still are going to require all these different traffic diversions and all these other different kind of considerations, and we'll include that in the report.
Any last comments? Okay. Seeing none, we can move on to our next item. Thank you again for the presentation. So this is our adjournment. We will be having our next working group meeting. It is currently scheduled for Thursday, April 10th. But as I mentioned, we do have a survey out to see if we can change the time. Depending on how quickly we get responses, we can revisit that April meeting. But for now, please hold April 10th at 9:30 a.m. This is also our last month at 401B. So for April 10th, that will be in our new location, the West Building, and I don't have the address, but it's at Union and Broadway. 1011 Union, yes, but at the intersection of Union and Broadway. We'll definitely include that in the invite. Apologies if there was confusion for anyone else about today's meeting. Thank you all for being here, and with that, adjourn.